back, everybody. It is an exciting day here on the Nonprofit Show because this is part of Nonprofit Power Week. We only do this a couple times a year, and it's always an exciting opportunity for us. Our partner this week is your part-time controller. Each and every day, we've had on an expert from the YPTC family talking about different things, different topics, but they all weave together. And today we're welcoming back one of our, I hate to say it, one of our faves from YPTC, Christine Chacko. She's going to be talking about the 5 questions you ask before buying software. And I suspect, Christine, a lot of these questions get asked after. And that's late,
More often
right?
than not.
Yeah, so we don't want that. We want to like step back and say, what should we be thinking about before? And note to self, this is not just about financial software. This is going to be addressing things that help you run your nonprofit. So it's not just the accounting software for those people in the back. It's for things that can go across your organization. So Christine, I'm thrilled you're going to be talking with us about this today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It'll be a lot of fun. I was telling Christine in the green room, I had 2 software demos in 2 days. And I kept thinking in the back of my mind, Christine's coming on. I should have scheduled these demos until after she was on the Nonprofit Show so that I would, I could have had different questions. But I'll tell you one thing we never question, and that is the amazing support we get from our presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Third Sector Company, Your Part-Time Controller, and Martis. Martis is one of our newest sponsors, and we're excited to welcome them on the Nonprofit Show. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. And as I welcomed Christine Chacko as a manager from Your Part-Time Controller, Christine's been on before. I'm going to say, Christine, you're the tech guru for us in so many ways. But paint a picture about what your life is like with YPTC and how you integrate your knowledge and your wisdom into the bigger family.
Yeah. So I'm a CPA. I have an accounting background, but I also have a tech background. So I help a lot of our clients implement accounting systems, redesign their systems, implement apps, really like think through how they can use their technology or more technology or use what they have better to really get insights from their data and make the decisions that they need to be able to make and report out on their data to their funders and to their donors and all of that. Just really help them get what they need.
Mm-hmm. I got to ask this question. Do you find, just as a cursory glance across the landscape of the nonprofit sector, that we are woefully behind? Because I keep hearing this, and I'm part of that messaging too, shamefully, that the nonprofit sector is like the last to adopt technology, the last to lean in. Is that true? Or is that just like a bad myth that we keep propelling?
I mean, I think it really depends on what tech you're talking about. Okay. A lot of nonprofits do use tech, and some like Excel is tech, like having a donor database is tech. Maybe they're not all using AI, or maybe they're not all using like the cutting edge solutions. But I think a lot more organizations than people think about are actively using something.
Okay. So there's hope. We're not like, back in the Stone Age, like I think sometimes we think we are, right?
Yes, there's always hope. There's always hope.
I love that. Well, let's get started because we were talking about this in the green room, as I mentioned earlier. You said something to me years ago that just rocked my world. And you said, we need to ask this question. Is it really time for new tech? And my immediate gut reaction is like, well, of course, it's always time. There's always, it's always things better, but not so fast. Talk to us about what this question really is drilling down towards.
Yeah. So sometimes like people will get maybe frustrated with not being able to get a report out of their accounting system that shows them exactly, what they're spending on every program, or, not get that information out of their database or whatever it is. And then they think, okay, so what I need to do is replace my accounting system.
Yeah.
Um, and or maybe they think like maybe my people don't know how to do it. But ultimately, like sometimes it's just you don't know how to use the software that you already have.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's a process problem. Maybe like you're not tracking all of the attributes of the data that you want to report on, and that's why you can't get that reporting out. Sometimes it's just a communication problem. Like sometimes maybe the people you're asking to get the data don't understand what you're asking. Maybe you're not
Mhm.
communicating in a way that makes it clear to them. Maybe they are understanding the data differently, or they're understanding what you can get out of the data differently. So sometimes, you just need training. Maybe you need training. The people at your organization that use that software need training to really understand what the data is, how to get it out, and also to understand best practices for using that particular piece of software to track your data. Sometimes you might need a process audit too. Like there could be significant steps that are missing, and
Mhm.
that's really what prevents you from being able to get your data out well.
It's when I hear you frame this up, and you've done so beautifully, I'm reminded that what you're saying here, that this is a human problem, that we
Yep.
need to circle back to our capacity, our training, our knowledge, our shared experience, and then look at the software. I mean, is that fair, or is that just me projecting my problem? Because I ask this question even in my own business at the American Nonprofit Academy. I've,
Yeah.
I've, I've gone there where I'm like, this is a piece of crap software. And then, I'm like, I want to throw it all out.
Yeah. I hear you. That
Right.
happens quite often. But ultimately, like, no matter how much software you're using or how well you're using it, like, it is always, it's a human issue. Like, getting the data out, putting the data in, it's always related to the people that are doing that. And ultimately, like you need to support your people and being able to do that well, and support them in being able to understand like where the data is messy or where it's missing, or how to use more tech to help tell them that.
Mhm.
But yeah, ultimately, like we can't do anything with our data or anything with our software without the humans.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating because for me, this question and the way to level set this conversation, it's fascinating to start with this, right? Because it comes back on us and what our human operating system is, right? Like how are the people around us navigating technology and looking at it? So part of this next question, I think is absolutely fascinating because it kind of dovetails to this and it asks, what are your tech priorities? I'm curious about this, Christine, because how do you know? Like, you don't know what you don't know. So, how can you
Yeah.
answer this, or how can you even formulate it?
Yeah, so the thing I always tell people is to start with your end point. Like, what are
Okay.
you ultimately looking to get out of this? Like, if some of your frustration is like, "Oh, look, I really want to be able to come up with this regular reporting for my board, but I can't figure out how to do that right now." Start with what you're looking for and make sure that you're clear on what you are not currently getting that you really need.
Okay.
And then you can kind of trace that back and see, okay, where are the inputs missing or where are the steps missing? And look at both your internal and external reporting needs and all of that. But make sure that along the way, you're thinking about the people, the processes, the communication, integrations. Maybe your data is coming from multiple different points and you want to be able to pull that all together. Think about automation and the user needs and your audience, like who is the output going to be for, and also who are the people taking care of the input. And obviously, cost and feasibility is another thing to think about, but you should really do a full evaluation of your priorities before you start thinking about any decisions.
Really interesting. I'm fascinated that you would like the starting point is the input and the ending point is the output and everything in between. Um, I don't think we do that. I don't think we ask those questions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the time we're like, I'm putting all of this data in there and I can't get anything out. I can't get what I need. But
Mhm,
sometimes we don't take the time to really define what it is that we need and
mhm,
define specifically what we're looking for, because that can really help us define earlier on, okay, what am I not tracking that I need to? Where am I missing? Like, I want to track information for these 5 programs, but maybe I'm lumping them all in one bucket in my software. So it's
mhm.
going to be super manual and super difficult to tease all of that apart and get your reporting out of there.
So I've got to ask Christine before we move on to question number three, should this just be a part of your regular, I would say like annual pro forma or something that you're always doing? Because things change. I mean, our
Yeah.
programming is changing, our funding's changing. This can't be a constant, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It is hard to change like your priorities as often as everything else changes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a bad idea to kind of look at this annually, especially
Okay.
if you're reporting out to a board or an executive
Okay.
committee or something like that, and their priorities are changing. You're probably going to need to take a look at what you're doing that needs to change along with that.
Smart. Yeah. And that's a brilliant way to think about it too, because then you're not going to be just chasing your tail. It seems like you'll be more you'll just be more in tune with what you need to do or what the possibilities are. I would imagine even for budgeting purposes, if you're going to be answering some of these questions up front, it's going to
Yeah.
help you as you navigate forward. Okay, so one and two have been great. Let's talk about number three, because this is a really interesting question, and that is honestly, is everyone at the nonprofit ready to change?
Yeah.
Uh, Whew, big question. Big question.
Yep, that's a big one. And, we see this come up a lot where like you have some team members that have been there for maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50 years. And they are used to doing what they do in a very specific way. And they're used to using this one specific process, this
Yeah.
one specific software. And any change that you make, even if you might think it's minimal, it's going to be significant for them. So before you decide, before you embark on that journey of change, it's really important to do some of that pre-work with your team members who will be affected, to really make sure that you have the buy-in. Talk to them about their concerns. Sometimes they might have concerns about the current process or system that they haven't been able to voice before, but just being
Yeah.
able to talk about that gives them an opportunity to really realize what's going on. Talk to them about what they need that they can't get right now, and that might also inform your decision, like what direction you go. But it's really important here to make sure that your people feel heard and that you're really thinking through and communicating and addressing those needs.
I love, Christine, that you use the phrase journey of change. Because that to me, when you communicate it that way, I'm like, okay, this isn't just going to happen from, Thursday to when you come in the next Monday.
Yeah,
That it's going to be a process. And it just immediately kind of allowed me to think, okay, we all are going to have to be rowing in this direction. Does that make
exactly.
sense? Yeah, very interesting. And people are afraid of change.
Yes.
This is like a really threatening thing. I've got to believe too, when we have nonprofit labor staff that's overwhelmed and burdened with a lot of responsibility, under resourced, and then you're asking them to change or adopt a whole new process, it's probably a little threatening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Change is hard. Change is hard for everybody. And it happens all the time, like in our personal lives, when we don't have control over things, it makes us feel, kind of all over the place sometimes. So the more we can address that with things that we can control, like a change in process, a change in technology, the more supported your folks are going to feel, and the better that whole changeover process will be in the end.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly wise. And it kind of dovetails to almost your first question, about, you know, do we really need to make a change, or do we just need to understand what's available and maybe seek refinement, versus like completely changing out? It's such
Yeah.
an interesting conversation to be having this with you. I would say too, during a time of tremendous change just because of AI.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's freaked out about it and everybody's talking about it. So this is even more of an interesting dialogue right now as we look at what's going on in the sector.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I know Patricia Buesa was on here a few days ago talking about AI, and she said one of the same things that I'm going to say. It like people sometimes think you can just adopt a new AI, a new technology, and slap it on, and that will solve all of your problems. But I think we know that that's not true, and you really have to like be prepared, have all your foundations in place, and make sure you understand what's going on. Like I can't tell you the number of people that have come to me with like, my client has this accounting system and they're not able to do this. They're not able to get this report or like have this data feed in from their CRM or whatever. And so they want to switch over to this more complicated, probably more expensive system. What do you think? And I'm like, let's understand the problem. What are they really trying to get to? What decisions are they trying to make with this data? And then see, like, half the time, their current system actually can get that for them. They just need to rethink how they're using the system and kind of apply best practices to how they're inputting the data, how they're tracking it. And then they can kind of solve for that problem before it occurs.
Yeah, it's kind of like take a deep breath moment here and step back. Really interesting way to look at this whole conversation. So let's move along a little bit in this chain of decision making. Maybe you do need to make a change. Maybe your team is ready. Maybe you're ready to become more sophisticated, more analytical. Maybe you have now the resources or funding to make these investments. Um, what do you look for if you're going to choose software that maybe you have never worked with before? I'm not saying upgrading or adding new bells and whistles, but I mean, really like, okay, we're pivoting from product A to product M.
Yeah.
What should we be looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first I would say like the more popular products have bigger user bases, and you can often find like support communities or forums online where people are talking about that product. So you can do a little bit of research, or have AI help you do some of that research and see what
Yeah.
people are saying about some of the solutions out there. And also note that the benefit to that, to using like more popular products, is that you will have a bigger support community if you end up going with that.
Yeah.
But then also like look at what other folks in your vertical are using. Like if you're an arts and culture organization, and you're looking for a new payroll solution, look at what other arts and culture organizations that you may know of are using for that. Like talk to your peers and find out, what are they using for bill pay? What are they using for payroll, for their accounting system, for their CRM, and why? And is it working well for them? Like talk to as many people as you can. Talk to your auditor or your accountant, like YPTC. We often have a pulse on that as well. And you can get a feel for what other people are using that works well.
Yeah, I love that you brought up, the sector within our sectors, right? I mean, it's really an important thing. If you're running a dog shelter, you're going to need different things than if you're running, an after school program, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it's a fascinating thing to kind of step back and realize you're going to have needs that are met one way or the other. Fascinating. I also really liked what you said about if you go with something a little bit more mainline, your support's going to be easier to find.
Exactly. Yeah. We sometimes have people come to us where they have been using an accounting system that they really like, but it's a very, very niche system. And often the problem is they're like, well, if I want a specific report, I have to go back to the makers of the software and have them custom build a report for me.
Yeah.
Or if
Uh-huh.
I can't figure
Mhm.
out how to do this thing, nobody else knows how to do it.
Right.
So that's one of the benefits of having a wider use system is like a lot of people will know how to use it aside from the makers of the software.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We had Katie Warnick on recently, and she is the owner of Staffing Boutique, and she was saying about when you're looking to expand your team or replace team members, if you are using specific software platforms, list that in the job description because then candidates that come through, you're not going to have to invest in the training to that extent.
Yeah.
And you'll have more confidence that you can bring somebody into that team, um, small or large, right? And you'll have people that are ready to go versus falling in love with a potential candidate and then finding out they've never worked with anything in your software suite. And then
Yeah.
you're like, oh man, we're gonna have to train them up. They're bright, they can be trained up, but if you had put forward that you had declared what your software was beforehand, everybody would have probably been in a better place.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the big elephant in the room, and that is implementation. Um, we were talking earlier in the very beginning of this conversation. Sometimes there's so much hope involved in looking at new software. You take a demo and you're just like, oh my God, this is going to solve all my problems, and I can just switch a button. But that's not really the case, is it?
No, I mean, I wish so much that it were. I wish with all the problems that our clients come to us with, we could just, hit a magic button and everything would be solved.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it doesn't happen in real life. A lot of the time, when you do a software demo with a vendor, it'll look amazing and it'll look like it can do everything. And it can do it, like that. Um, but that doesn't always happen when you get into it and you start putting your real data into it. So that's another reason I say, like, try to look for user reviews and user forums where people are talking about how they're actually using the software and some of the drawbacks it may have. The more people you can talk to who have actually used these solutions, the better. And then when you're implementing, you'll also want to assess the skills of your team. Like for widely used tech, sometimes maybe you can implement it yourself if you have savvy people on your teams who have done similar implementations before. For more niche tech or more complex tech, you'll probably have to use an implementer. And, when you do that, just make sure that you have an implementation partner that's really communicative. You don't
Mhm.
want somebody who just like falls off the face of the planet when something comes up. You really want to make sure that it's somebody who's invested in the relationship and invested in your success too. They should be able to answer your questions about complications, integrations, customizations, all that kind of stuff beforehand. And that communication is really key.
Yeah. Can you give us some like strategies on embracing an implementation or changeover? I mean, and this is going to sound really hokey, but are there better times of the year or the week or days or what should we be thinking about? Because what I'm hearing you say is that you got to plan for this. You got to
Mhm.
plan for the the organization to go through this, what are some things we should be thinking about?
Yeah. And so, like that question on timing, that's a great one. We'll often have people come and say, all right, I want to implement this at year end. I want to start the new year on
Oh
a
yeah.
fresh, payroll system or accounting system or whatever it is. But sometimes doing a software implementation at year end is a lot harder because you're also closing out the year. You're also getting ready for your audit. You're also getting all your funder reports ready. So there's a lot going on, and it
Yeah.
can just, it can extend the timeline a lot. It's often easier and just as feasible to do a switch in the middle of your year.
Mm.
You may want to bring over some data for your old system so you could have the whole year's worth of data in your new system. There are a lot of workarounds that you can do to kind of make it easier, but there's nothing wrong with doing a software change in the middle of the year as long as you're prepared for it.
Mm.
And often, like taking that extra burden off of all the folks involved in year end is really helpful.
Yeah, I think I've fallen into that trap of exactly what you said. It's like, okay, well, no, got to start the new year, and we're gonna have this new program. And yeah, you're right. It's a stressful time in the nonprofit sector anyway, because a lot of times our client needs are escalated. We're working with donors, year-end stuff. We're working with staff that takes time off or reduces time at work because of the holidays. I mean, there's a lot going on, and then you layer all this in, it can be quite burdensome.
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
okay. Well, you're a whiz. I'm just delighted that you could join us today. Christine Chacko, wow, this is the person that you want to connect up with when you have all these like tech issues, but you're really having human issues with
Mm,
your tech. And
exactly.
this has been a lot of fun. Once again, Christine Chacko,
Yeah,
manager,
thank
your
you.
part-time controller. Oh my gosh, yeah, I always learn so much from you. And I applaud you, Christine, for you never set my hair on fire, right? You you always are like, okay, this is manageable. This is a process. You know, calm down. And
Oh,
we need that.
oh,
We need
good.
that in our sector. So
Good. It's always manageable.
yeah, I love it. I think that's amazing. Well, there's been a lot to manage this week during Nonprofit Power Week with our friends over at YPTC, your part-time controller. We've talked about red flags that boards miss. We've been talking about AI and that trust factor in human judgment. We're going to be talking about how you change your accounting partner and staff and teams and what that looks like. Again, the questions that you should be asking the finance team and your finance partners, riveting information. And then that software questions about your software before you buy. So lots of different information today that bleeds in and weaves in with all the other things that we've been talking about during this Nonprofit Power Week. It's been fascinating. Again, we've had amazing partners throughout this journey, and we don't do Nonprofit Power Weeks very often, and they're very special because they're a total drill down. Our partners this week have been the amazing folks over at Your Part-Time Controller, along with Martis, Staffing Boutique, American Nonprofit Academy, Bloomerang, JMT Consulting, and Third Sector Company. These are the folks that join us day in and day out. So, Christine, thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been great. Hey, as we end each and every episode of the Nonprofit Show, we leave with this message, and it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well.